We want heaven at home, all of us. I've never come across one person saying to me, I don't want heaven at home. But we do not do the things that will bring heaven home. So that's nonsense. You know, if you do things that will create chaos and so on, you will never have heaven at home. So why don't we set our minds so clearly on, I want heaven at home, and I will do all the things at all costs to get heaven at home.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful interview. Today, I've got a very special guest. Cassie Carstens has been in full-time ministry since 1980 and the founder of the World Needs a Father movement, as well as several other movements and ministries. He provides counsel to leaders worldwide in both the Christian and secular spaces. His deepest desire is to see heaven come on earth through fathers who love and lead their families as God intended. Cassie's closest companion, his wife Jenny, and together they have been involved in marriage counseling seminars for 29 years, and thus have a great love for the family unit. Cassie Carstens, thank you very much. What name do you go by? Do they call you Pastor?
No, please. I'm happy with Cassie.
but thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I remember I was taking part in the World Needs a Father, one of the workshops. So we're meeting Monday morning, and we're doing those 4 hours. And I remember I was just sitting there listening, and you said something, and I thought, my word, I have to meet this man. I actually thought, you know, one day maybe I might take a drive down to Cape Town just to meet him, because he's somebody I recognize as somebody who's ran a certain race, has distilled some thoughts, and it would be good to sit and have a chat with him. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. You're hearty welcome. Looking forward to coffee with you.
Yes. So where are you now?
I'm living in Durbanville.
Oh, you're living in Durbanville, right?
Yeah, that's near Cape Town. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And then, so you wrote this beautiful book. Thank you for actually writing it. I'm a writer myself, so I always appreciate somebody who's taken time to put their thoughts down and to distill, to reflect, and to put together something that will also live long after them. Maybe let's just get into it. You talk of the cry of the children. And maybe for those who don't know what you do and about more of your work, but how come you talk about the cry of the children? Why the world needs a father? Why is that so important to you?
Well, Thabang, firstly, it started off by me visiting a refugee camp in Tanzania in 2002. And I had to encounter the most horrific stories that you can imagine. While the refugees came in and they told us that the rebel forces came in 18, 19-year-old boys, and they literally slaughtered the people, you know, chopped off their hands and their arms and so on. And so listening to fathers telling me these stories, telling me how their pregnant daughters were cut open, babies taken out and chopped up. It just ripped my heart apart. So there in the middle of Africa, I cried out to God and I said, what is wrong with Africa? Because at that stage, I've already been engaged in leadership institutes. So I started 2 of them. The one is through sport ministry, and the other one is for holistic community transformation, because I was involved in community transformation. And suddenly I realized that the biggest problem is not poverty, and it's not HIV/AIDS and all the other things that we deem to be great problems. The biggest problem of not only Africa, later on discovered, but the whole world is actually fatherlessness. It is by far the biggest problem, because the impact of that is just so enormous on all spheres of society and on all human beings, actually. And so that was a revelation for me. To just sense that this is the big problem and that we have to create fathers for the children. In those days, I felt the instruction was to turn the soccer coaches into fathering figures. as substitute fathers for the boys, which I did train soccer coaches and so on. And so that started there. But then also my wife came home one day and she had to take care of 360 orphans that she had to find homes for in a township called Kayamandi by Stellenbosch. And one day she came home and she said, but this daughter, this girl, she can't find a home for her. Could she come and live with us? So Abongile Kwaza came, and then a number of weeks later, she just observed the other children because her father died when she was 1 year old. She never had a father. And then observed the other children at night. They would hug me and say good night. She would stand at a distance and just wave and go to her bedroom. And then one night she was next to me and opened her arms and she said, good night, Daddy. And in 5 seconds, I had to decide whether I say goodnight Abongile, which would change nothing, or if I say goodnight my daughter, which would change everything. And this is what happened. So I said goodnight my daughter, and she became our daughter. She's still living with us, and she is phenomenal. But then the orphan situation of South Africa came into my home. We have close to 3 million orphans in South Africa. Some say it's 3.8, some say it's 2.8, but so close to 3 million orphans in South Africa. It is one of the highest incidences of orphans in the world. And on top of that, 67% of our children do not grow up with their biological father. 67%, that is the highest in the world, it sure looks like. So we are one of the most orphaned or fatherless nations of the world. And that's why this is the big elephant in the room. Now it's election time. I don't know how many of the candidates even spoke about fatherlessness, spoke about the family in South Africa. So we don't speak about the most essential thing of all. And we know you can never restore society unless you restore families. That's the building block of society. So you waste your time sometimes to work on things that would not restore society. So that is how it came to me initially. But then obviously when you dive into this issue of fatherlessness, I mean, it shouts from every corner. We work in prisons, we work in schools, I mean, everywhere, just describe. We live in a father-deprived world, and we suffer the consequences of it.
You know, you said so much. I remember even when we did the workshop, I think we had somebody from the Bahamas, or there was somebody from, there's different people from different parts of the world. There was somebody in Kenya. I don't know if there was somebody in Brazil, but I just noticed that there were different parts of the world. When you talk about Kenya, when I read your book and you open up with a story like that, actually my heart was so, would you say, you know, your heart was I felt it, and I was wondering how you coped with it. Even when you talk about Abongile, I must confess, when I read that part a little bit, I actually teared up a little bit, you know. And with all that, what struck me is then
sorry, Thabang, can I just?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
I was saying when I read about how, I think you said you called me daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the book you tell the story of how, you know, Abongile was, she watched a new home, and also how you tell the story of, you know, how you were trying to resist it, even when your wife was saying, hey, what do we do about this? And you wanted to pray about it. I just loved how you were honest about your reflection. And you said you're going to pray about it. And then eventually you said, hang on, okay, we're going to do this. But it made me cry, actually, when I thought about that. It made me think about how also you were present in terms of what you saw in Kenya in your travels, what you saw with Abongile. It seemed as if there's a sensitivity, and I was wondering where that comes from, because for me, I think if I saw people with, you know, if I went to Kenya and I saw something like that, I don't know if I'd be able to cope with it. And so where did you find I mean, you felt it, but how did you respond to that? I was just moved by that in the book, that you see something very difficult, but you also respond to it.
Yeah, Thabang, I think a lot of our empathy has died over the years due to the overload of information. I mean, we get it on the television every day. I mean, we should cry every day watching the news. You know, just this morning on what is happening in Afghanistan. I mean, I'm crying, man. They talk about the possibility of 1 million children to die in the next year because of poverty and lack of food in Afghanistan only. I mean, but we're so desensitized by the overload of information. Now, one thing I think God has really helped me with over the years and said that if you lose the sensitivity of your heart, you lose everything. Because you can't think clearly. How can you think clearly if you can't feel? It is not a cognitive exercise to look at statistics in the world. It is an emotional thing. And therefore, I always pray that I will always be so sensitized. Actually, I trust that, you know, the Bible says, actually, we will be judged ultimately by what we see or do not see. Now, and that is very important to me. I cannot walk by someone in pain and not notice it or address it. So it intensifies life a lot. There were two things that sensitized me for being conscious of all the challenges of everyday life. And the first one was traveling to Singapore because they selected me to be part of the Haggai Institute trainees. And I was the only white guy amongst the people with other color. And I had to not defend, but explain what my church would do in the apartheid era in 1984. And I had no words. I could not say that my church is actually contributing to a solution. I felt so ashamed. And I'll never forget that, because the others, they said, you know, which they call the Dutch Reformed Church, the apartheid church, your apartheid church can change the world. I didn't understand anything of that initially. But later on, I realized if only we understand the world and don't close our eyes, because the white people of South Africa mostly close their eyes for the impact of apartheid. They only knew their side of it, not the oppressing side of it, you know. And therefore, that said to me, listen, you better open your eyes for what is happening in the world. That's the first thing. And I vowed that I would be conscious of things and talk to people that experience things in a world that I'm not living in. So it was not only in South Africa, because at that moment I started to get black friends and colored friends and so on, to be conscientized by what they experience and not only what I experienced. But then also later years, 2000, so 21 years ago, I started to travel the world. And I've traveled probably about 140 nations. And I would schedule every year to travel to a place that will make me sincerely uncomfortable. So that I will experience things, so whether that's in Iraq or Iran or Ethiopia or wherever, that I would experience something out of my context. So that was the one thing. So contextually, you know, I travel a lot and then hope to learn by my eyes and my heart, and not by only what I read. But then also my first daughter died in the arms of my wife, and she was born with a heart disease. And to sit with her, knowing that she would die and that every breath that she would take would be important, pleading one more breath, one more heartbeat, and then ultimately she died. And the lesson to me was never take any breath that you take or any heartbeat or any minute of the day for granted. Never. And that, I think, opened up my senses to say, I'm going to live every minute of every day fully conscious. You cannot live fully if you don't live fully conscious of what is happening. So unfortunately, it intensifies your life, and you have more tears than the average person, but you have more life than the average person at the same time.
Yeah, I think that for me, it comes out very strongly in the book, because also when I hear you speak, it's like, you know, somebody who's been through a lot, but, you know, somehow they got to think about it. And speaking about pain, yeah, you tell a story about, you know, a father God with a skin on, and father wounds and mother wounds. I wanted us to talk a little bit about that. Maybe let me ask it this way. Is there somebody who doesn't have, who's not wounded by their parents? Is there such a person or not really?
I grew up in a very privileged home with a great relationship with my dad and my mom. Not all the siblings with the same good relationship, but at least on my end, I could argue I probably didn't grow up with a father wound. But then later on, I discovered, and this is how you discovered it. You discovered it with the things that make you nervous or irritate you or make you angry. You know, those kinds of emotions. And you ask yourself, do all people have the same emotion in this condition? And then you suddenly say, no, there are some people that do not have the same emotion. For instance, in my case, my dad, he was a great relationship, but he always inspired me, but he never said to me, this is great. He always said, next time better. So even if I get 98%, he would say, next time better. I must get 99 or 100. Even if I got 100, he would say, are you the only one that got 100? You know, that kind of strange questions, because he came from a lot of insecurities. So that then transfer that to me. So in my case, for instance, I always feel whatever I do is not good enough. And it haunts me. Now I've learned to live with it, and I can cope with this. But if you do not cope with this, then you transfer that responsibility over to the one closest to you, which in this case would be my wife. And then I want my wife to affirm me all the time and all of that nonsense. And then you're not completely free. So I have not come across one person without any woundedness. I think all of us carry some wound, whether from parents or from the teenage years or from circumstances. We react to people due to our woundedness in background. And it could come broader, contextually, for instance, it could come. South Africans in general, it could be, but it could be also very particular from a father and a mother.
Yes, because you do talk a little bit about it, you know, you actually wrote very nicely about it, what happened in Stellenbosch and how you resisted what happened, the story with your father, and how he was comparing you with his friend's son. And but you also touched on how, you know, so when we have these wounds, what we go and do is, you know, we try and achieve, and we try to work so hard, and we try to we don't, it's like we love people, we love things, and you know, we use people, and we try to puff ourselves up in different ways to make ourselves feel better. And even the working hard, we want the power, and more specifically to men. What's your observation with men who try to, I suppose, work hard? It looks so noble to work hard, to provide for the family, but there's a price we pay.
Yeah, you know, it's amazing to observe people. You know, the first thing that I realized, for instance, many pastors, they introduce themselves not with their first name, but with their title. Now that is the first indication of insecurity. Why would you introduce yourself with a title? Because the title distances you from other people. If I say I'm doctor this and this, immediately I'm distanced from the person, or pastor this and this. Why would they not? Because it looks like they need that for their, I don't know what, public profile or something like this. But it shows that they're deeply insecure inside, because if you're secure, you don't have to puff yourself up with titles and performances and stuff like that. So I think it stems from what we call the false self and the true self. The false self is you depart from a notion that I am rejected, for instance, as a child, or I am incapable. My father never said I'm great, or mother never said I'm great, incapable, and I'm not liked. And therefore now I have to create understanding self-esteem that is based on what I do, what other people think of me, and what I have. And that is why people buy cars they cannot afford, to show people that they are fine, or they become, you know, addicts of popularity. And that's a massive thing nowadays with the Facebooks and the stuff, the social media, addicts of popularity. And that shows that you actually have insecurities. If you know how the Creator made you sufficiently equipped to really represent God on earth, then you will not fish for all these compliments and other things that could help you through life. And so it's a stemmed from a deep sense of insecurity, I think, woundedness, and that messes up everything. That is why people in position, whether they're a CEO of a company or politicians, where they distance themselves and they want to live above people, they want to outsmart people, they want to outperform others. I don't have that approach in life, because that is a killing thing. Then everything in life is competition. And I think everything in life should be service, which means that if you are secure in yourself, you go to the feet of people, not lord yourself over them, and you serve people. Because it's from serving that we could restore society. It's definitely not from lording it over other people that we will restore society. That will be a constant battle and a fight until the end.
Yeah, and I suppose it will be then apt to now link to this, because it's also associated then with identity. And you talk about, there's a primary identity, there are different identities that we adopt, right? In this culture where, you said the reigning culture, I liked how you described there is the reigning culture. And a person can't be a father until they understand how they are as a man and their own identity. And then you say our first identity then is with God, to understand what's God's mission on earth, to be part of that. Could you talk more to that? Just the different identities we adopt,
Yeah, it's amazing when you read the Bible, how God talks about us. And right from the beginning, you have to cultivate and reign over this earth, for instance, is the assignment to the human being. And then later on, we are called ambassadors of God and even co-workers of God and stuff like that. So we sometimes, if we are spiritual, we pray and we think that God would provide all the solutions. I think we would rather pray and say, God, give me the strength to be that manager of this earth, to be that ambassador here, to be that builder of the kingdom of God here. So make me responsible and give me the strength of that. But I learned this so much from Miles Monroe. Miles Monroe was a brilliant writer, and I visited him once in my life there in the Bahamas. And Miles Monroe says that God wants to extend his rulership on earth by firstly depositing his character in us. So we have love, we have righteousness, we have, good things. And then another guy is from Nigeria. He writes about the superior principles that we govern this world that is governed by inferior principles. So forgiveness is superior to resentment, for instance. And so if we understand that we have the superior principles to govern this earth, then our approach will be completely different. We will serve, but we will serve with the right principles. And then we will do good things. Doing good would be the most essential thing for us. What will be beneficial to others in this world? And if we understand that primary identity means I'm a representative of God on earth, that's key. And if I wake up every morning, this is how I wake up. I wake up with a prayer that says, Creator of the universe, thank you that you call me your son. And co-heir, of Jesus and so on. So you endow on me that understanding of responsibility, but responsibility to serve the earth with goodness, which I receive from him. That is the primary identity. If we don't start there, we will struggle. If we start with a victim identity, for instance, I am a victim, all the things in life happened and it hurt me and then we want to receive. We don't want to give. Then we live not from abundance, but from scarcity. And I think that is a massive thing in South Africa, for instance, scarcity mentality. And it's in our culture. I deserve, I need, I am entitled. And that's all a victim mentality that we carry, instead of I am sufficiently equipped to really serve other people.
Yes. And, the way you talk about it, I often wished, when you go to church, somebody could say this to you, right? Because when you talk about, God is great, he wants to do good. And then you quote another gentleman, I think it's Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who says when you get called, it's actually you are being called to die. And so then my question is, and all these desires, all these feelings, then what are they for? What are they for if you need to, if your person is not living from, okay, I've got these dreams, I want to be this person, versus my primary identity is the Almighty. And if that's the primary identity, but that also means your heart gets wrung a little bit, like you have to die a little bit, So how do you balance the two,
Yeah. I think Andrew Murray is the guy that actually brings those two together well. He says, if you do not empty yourself of self-centeredness, of selfishness, of every self thing, and that is die to the self. Mm-hmm. If you do not empty yourself, you cannot be filled with God. And God's character and God's goodness and so on, because the self is inherently self-centered, and wants from other. While if you're filled with God, God is the example of how to give. That is why He gave His Son and so on. So then things happen in your life. You die. I have to die every day. So I do ask that, Lord, let me die from my self-concern so that my focus would be on someone else. I think Thabang, the best is, let me tell you a little legend, that they say that the heaven and hell one day will look the same. You go by the door, when you look in, you see tables with nice feast, fantastic food. But then at the door, they stiffen your elbow. They make something that stiffens your elbow. And then they give you a spoon attached to your hand. You can't take it off. And the spoon is longer than your arm, which means that if I try to feed myself, it's impossible because the spoon is too long and my arm is stiff and I can't bend my arm. So, and in hell, they try to eat. They try to feed themselves. In heaven, they feed each other. And I think that's the difference. So if we do not die of selfishness, we cannot be filled with that other-centeredness, that altruism that we see so beautiful in Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, other figures that we see so beautiful, concern about other people and really not only thinking of myself. And we live in a culture where everything tells you, you are important, you are the center of the universe. But that is killing, because that is competitive in its essence. So I always have to compete. The cake is so big, I must get the piece of cake before others get it. That is seriously competitive. And I think the world cannot be restored like that. The world can be restored by service and other centeredness.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I think the other thing that stood out for me is, I work with a lot of people when they come for sessions for counseling. And one of the things that I've found very interesting is talking to teen moms, single moms, and just men also, they get to this place in their lives where they sort of question things like, where's this man who's my father, right? And did he not think about me? Maybe I just want to see him. I just maybe want to look. So people go on this search to find their father. Then I realized, I think sometimes we miss what fathers actually do, and then so you put it. I mean, you put some principles there, right? And one of them is then a father then establish moral authority. Politics are coming up, and I think people have been lied to so much that when somebody stands on the podium, be it a politician, a minister, anyone, even a doctor, an accountant, you start when the authority is like, but I'm not going to have some person telling me what to do. And then when you say, but the father needs to, as part of what a father does, is to establish moral authority. To talk more a little bit about that, just the different things that the father must do, and if they don't do, what happens then to society, to their children and family.
Yeah. I think we will all agree that our world lacks moral values, good moral values. And morality, if you define morality, is to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason. That's the shortest definition of morality. And obviously, growing a child, this is the key thing to teach him. What is the right thing to do at the right time for the right reason? And the father needs to do that. Now, we find, as Christians, we find our moral compass in the Bible. The Muslims would find it in the Quran, and the atheist would find it in his chosen set of principles. So all of us have a chosen set of principles, which we call the moral compass, that we live by, all of us, without exception. So now we are just saying that if the father is not very intentional about that, then the child will not know what is right to do. And sometimes now we see people, it's like, for instance, corruption in South Africa. I mean, you ask yourself, they want to kind of solve the problem by laws and by policing and stuff. But all of us know that will not work. The only solution there is a father or mother then that will teach a child, you never take something that does not belong to you. Not even a grain of sugar you will ever take if it does not belong to you. And so that morality, that the father would establish that. But then, and this is key, that the additional word authority on top of morality is sometimes very confusing because it feels harsh. It feels, again, from above. And what I write in the book is that we all like authority, because if we drive down the road and all the lights are green, then we like authority because there are red lights for the others. So if authority benefits us, we will definitely like it. And this is how the Bible presents the authority of God. He says, do these things so that you may enjoy life, so that you will have a long life in a land flowing with milk and honey. That is the heaven at home life. So the authority, and therefore to make it practical at home, that the father would never create any rule at home if it's not for the benefit of all. So I learned this, for instance, I can't say to my teenage daughter, don't play the music loud because it's for my benefit. She loves it. But what I can say to her is, okay, let's have a rule. Everyone plays his music loud. And my daughter then immediately rebounded by saying, no, Dad, you're not going to play your music loud, because she didn't like my music. And so we solved the problem by saying, let's have the rule that will benefit all, which means if you want to play it loud, put your earphones on. And so never create a rule if the rule is not for the benefit of all. Or if Dad says you cannot come late, then he must not come late. Yeah. So it is not to create a higher space for yourself, but it is actually to serve others with something that would benefit all.
Yeah, and I think, when I came across that, when you said that, I thought, but that also means you must be the example. And we often like, do as I say, not so much as I do. And because when you say that if the rule must benefit everyone in the family, I think it's also an ask, because then you have to be the example, you have to be the model, which is not an easy thing to do.
Absolutely. But if you think on how children watch you, where are they going to learn how to be a dad or a husband or a leader in society or whatever? I mean, how can they aspire to be that if they don't have examples of it? And the best way to get the examples is at home. So yeah, exemplary life, absolutely essential. That's why fathers should get up early in the morning, get their minds right before they even interact with anyone else. So I train my mind first in the morning, that whenever I see the first person, I will greet him with the greatest smile and with enthusiasm. And that's brilliant, because you create that environment for people. And can I just say this? I've studied the neuroscience a little bit, and it is fascinating that they have now discovered that character, listen to this, is not formed by what you hear, what people teach you. Character is formed by observation of your right brain, and that conclusion is made 6 times per second. You observe and decide what you are going to align with. So if my child looks at me and he has to decide, this is what I'm going to do, then I must be the example. There's a guy called K. Ryan that wrote about character formation. He's the guru of character formation, one of the big ones. And he's the first one, he says, is example. Yeah. And then he also says environment. That's why we say create heaven at home, create the right environment at home, environment. And then obviously he says other things like experience things, and exhortation and so on. So, but the example is the first one, he says. And therefore, I honestly believe Albert Schweitzer was right. Example is not a part of training. Example is training. So I have to live an exemplary life.
Definitely. I think the environment, I think the modeling, And which is something that I observe. You know, I work in different communities, and I get very concerned because even going back to the moral authority, you know, there are people whose sons say commit crime, and from the mom to the father to the grandmother, they just say, well, I mean, he's got a job, at least we eat, and it's almost normal. It seems as if it's normal, and that concerns me as well, you know. Also, when we talk about marriage, but then I think it's the Race Relations Institute that put out those stats about only a third of people are raised by the two people, by their mom and father. Everyone else is growing up either as a skip generation. And so I worry about the models that we have. And then the other thing you say, besides establishing establishing moral authority, is then how a father then confers identity. And I think a lot of us struggle, you know, with who we are. It's almost there isn't a generational passing on of certain values, certain a way of living. It's almost as if everybody starts where they start. And maybe to speak more on that.
Yeah. You see, the thing is, let me rip something from the wall here. Just a sec. This is the old coat of arms for the Carstens family. I got it from the internet. I don't know what it actually means, but so we recreated this for our own house. Why? Because the dominant values of culture is money, sex, power, and cell phone, and a few other things. But I don't want my children to grow up with those dominant values, because then they become it. And culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think we all know by now, which means that culture is the most dominant force in life. That's why I'm so concerned that kids live for 7 hours a day on their phone. So the culture is not South African culture anymore. That culture is a culture which is a global culture. And that really infiltrates everything that we do. Now, if you are not intentional as a father to have a intentional different culture that could lay the foundation for all your decisions, then you mess up. So you got to exchange those things by chosen values. And therefore, we did this many years ago when my children were young, and it transformed our lives, because our 3-year-old daughter came with the suggestion that we would serve poor children. I did not even have it in mind, but family voted that would be our dominant culture. That would be our dominant value, sorry. And then that became our new culture, because then we had to plan how to serve it. I had to have this as a budget item in my monthly budget, you know, and we had to put time aside and intentionality and find the poor children and go to them. And then suddenly 20 years later, this is who we are. Because you were intentional about those values. For instance, I always wanted to buy a very nice new car. But that day, I lost the opportunity to do it, because new cars, we decided, would not be of a high value. I've never bought a new car in my life, and never bought an expensive car, because I used the money for the things that we value. And you pay the money, and you give time and strategic planning towards what you value. And then you become that. And now people, they know us as the people that empower other people and that are culturally enriched and stuff like this, because these were the values that we have chosen. And then you become that and be that.
Yeah, I remember you telling that, you know, also how you tell that story of how your daughter then said, we're going to serve the poor, and you're like, hey, hang on. And then you go through other different children, even your son, which would be reasonable, also agreed. And so there is how you describe how you had that meeting. I quite like that. And the other thing, maybe if I go to the other thing, it's more like maybe a word on, we live in a society where, you know, if you say something, you know, people can cancel you. If you say something, I mean, you can lose clients, your job, and so, and if you say, this is who I am, you're also saying that this is who I'm not, which means then you might be in conflict with some people. And so how does one navigate a world where you're often going to then be labeled as somebody who's trying to be difficult, or you are backward, or you're not thinking straight?
Now, I would just laugh if someone say, I'm not thinking straight. I say, do you think that the world is thinking straight? The world is thinking skew, man. And I don't want to think skew. So I want to think straight, actually. But you know where I learned it first? I learned it from Martin Luther King Jr. Brilliant book, one of the best books ever written, I believe, Strength to Love by Martin Luther King Jr. And he said, we are non-conformists because we do not conform to the pattern of the world, because the general thing in the world is wrong. You know, the majority are wrong. That's it. So we are non-conformist. And therefore, we got to reshape the world. And I trained my children to do that. And especially in the teenage years, you know, they don't want to be different. They want to be like the friends and so on. But then I trained them to think, listen, we're not different. We are special. We are unique. And so we are trendsetters. So there's a positive swing to this. We need trendsetters in the world that can create a better world. Yeah. So that's why I say we bring heaven home, and then to the streets, and then to the schools, and then to all the other places. And that is enticing to people. They all want a better world. But you'll never get a better world if you think at the same, with the same pattern as the world. I mean, Einstein said this already. You can't create something better if you think in the same way as those that created the existing thing that you are living in. So the mind must be completely different. And the mind must be that beneficial mind for a better world. And not for myself, but for a better world. And if that is the mind, you become a trendsetter of a new world, which will be a much better world than the previous one. And if you call that not thinking straight, I think that is the only one who is thinking straight, actually. But then I'm okay. Then I don't want to think straight if straight is wrong.
then you're fine with it. I think you touched on it with Martin Luther King. You actually quote him a few times. I like the idea of, I think it's a soft mind, and is a strong mind. There's a soft mind and a different kind of mind.
Yes, he says, we live with soft minds and hard hearts. Yes. We got to change it around. Yes. We got to have a tough mind, knowing the right principles, and a soft heart, which is love. And that is strength to love. The combination of the book, the word, strength to love. This is how we have to live, and this is brilliant.
I particularly like that, and which helps me with this part, the difficult part of reading your book, right? So this was hard for me. It was a section that made me want to rub my chest a little bit, So you tell a story about love, and how your wife once asked you whether, if she got involved, if things changed and she wasn't the way, she didn't look the way she looked, and her health changed, would you be there to love her? And then you had said that, you didn't answer that until later on. You tell another beautiful story, which shocked me, but it really grabbed my attention, I forget the gentleman's name. He had a baby, and he prayed and he thanked God for this beautiful baby. The doctor checks the baby, comes back and say, hey, but your child has this and that issue. And then he says, pray the same prayer. And then he learns there that we love, as people, we tend to love them for ourselves. We don't really love. We have these contracts with people. And when I thought about that, I thought, wow, but this is hard. This is hard what you're talking about. To just love and not expect.
Yeah. We use the word love in a completely wrong way. I teach my children never to use the word without defining the word. Because, I come in the evening and I want sex, and I tell my wife, I love you, but actually I want something. And that is contractual. I want to get something. When I want to get something, that's not love. That is self-love. And then we got to define it as self-love. I want to self-love. So now me and my wife, we have a great understanding on this. But love, by the pure definition of real love, I call it real love. It is giving. Yeah. It is not giving to receive. The moment it is giving to receive, it is self-love. And whether that is expectational love which is something that we always have. I have these expectations. If people do not meet the expectations, then I get frustrated. Now, this is the story of this man, Norm Wakefield. And that is, he had a Down syndrome child. And then he could not pray and say, thank you, God, for the best gift that you can give a parent, a child. She is perfect and I love her. He could not pray that because that is what he prayed before he discovered that she was Down syndrome. And then he could not repeat the prayer after he discovered that. And then he was shocked that he did not love her because he loved his expectations for her. And that's the same thing that I discovered in myself with big shock 10 years ago. That day is the day that I started to say, we have heaven at home. Because that day I discovered that real love, God's kind of love, real pure love, is to give and only give and not receive. So now I live in a home where we give, not to receive. So we crucify that thing of wanting to receive and we only give. And that is why we absolutely live in a conflict-free home for 10 years. So can you live in a conflict-free world? Yes. If you only give, but with no intention to receive. Now, is that easy? No, it's not easy because you've got to die in your self-concern. Is that right? But I found it so beautiful. The only time that we have a little tussle is, for instance, if I jump up and I say, can I make you tea? And she says, no, I want to make tea. Why? No, I can make tea. No, you've made too much tea for me now. It's my turn now. And that's that nice kind of tussle, how to outdo each other in goodness. And that is possible, but only if we live with pure love. Because the other one is conflict all over the show. If I love to receive, all irritations are related to expectations. The higher your irritations, the higher your expectations. And can I add something more? The higher your pride, the higher your expectations, and the higher your irritations. And everyone in that category of irritations know exactly when they hear what I'm saying now. This is true. I'm only irritated because of my expectations. And my pride heightens that for me. And that is what is messing up this whole world. And so even if we talk about reconciliation with other people, whether that's in marriage, whether that's between races, we have these expectations. And then we think that we can reconcile. There's no way in doing that. If we don't do for the sake of someone else, there will maybe toleration, but not reconciliation. And therefore, I think it's a major principle that we have lived by. And we call it selfless sacrificial love. That's the only pure love that we have. And the others we must call by its real name. Its real name is self-love.
Yeah. And with that, why this also was particularly interesting for me, interesting and difficult, was that you mentioned the point, how you're giving somebody the power to make you happy and not happy, so with these expectations. And we give that to God, right? We give God, the God has that power. Then I was also thinking, but does it, when you then, God has that power, is it okay are you guaranteed to be happy? I don't know if you understand my question, because the other side of it is, we have this expectation that, if I'm following God, or if God then has that power to make me happy, does he also have the power and the right to make me unhappy? Like that prophet who was told, your wife is going to die. Don't cry too long. Just unhappiness with how things are going. And I'm asking for people who they believe that, my life is going to turn, I'm going to serve God, it's going to turn out like this. And then it's not the picture that you ask for. It's more like a Paul, where you're going to suffer for the gospel. And in what state should you be? Should you be, can you be sad? Should you take that with joy? I don't even understand my question, but God with happiness and unhappiness.
Are we allowed to be unhappy? Is the question, I think. And yes, life happens, and unfortunately, life God is not always the source of unhappy things that happen to you. The devil and other people and yourself, and there are many factors in making life really unhappy. Now, the question is, Do I then make that unhappiness, whatever happens? Now, I lost 2 children, and you can't say that you are happy when 2 of your children die. You are intensely unhappy, obviously, and sorrowful, and I just lost 2 great friends this year through COVID, and so you can't say in those days that you're happy, but this is the point, that you will not put that unhappiness on the throne of your life, which means dictating your life. Not depart from that unhappiness, but depart from something that says, this is the mere fact on which I am. How can I turn this into something beneficial for other people, and then ultimately will turn to beneficial for myself as well? And so because I cannot just mourn and mourn and mourn, and for the rest of my life, I'm enslaved by mourning and sorrow and unhappiness, then I'm in a prison. Let me give you one example. I met a guy that never forgave his dad. So he lived with a fundamental approach to life of resentment. His dad died. His mother actually killed his dad in front of him, and that was the greatest moment in his life. And I said to this guy, you got to forgive your dad, and you got to receive that forgiveness from God. There's no other place that you can receive it unless you think that God forgave you, and you must share that forgiveness. But he put unforgiveness and resentment on the throne of his life. So everything is, my dad owes me, but he's already dead. My dad owes me, people owe me, everyone owes me. And that becomes the domineering or dominating factor of his life. And that is wrong. I think God wants to give us a different dominating factor, which is not happiness like I get everything my way. No, it is deep sense joy. Even if the joy is just I can breathe, I can see, I can, whatever it is, a deep sense of joy, and that we depart from that position in our relationship with other people. And that is why, and many people have written on this, Stephen Covey for one, and wrote that people that are not leaders, their circumstances determine them. People that are leaders, they determine the circumstances. So it's an inside-out approach. And I think I have learned to have an inside-out approach, not wait for my wife to make me happy. No way. God makes me happy. That's the inside. And then I share the happiness with others. And that's why I say the mind is so important at the beginning of the day, that you don't depart from I need, but you depart from I have. I have an abundance of joy, love, and things to give other people, and make that the throne from which you depart and serve other people.
Beautiful. You remind me, I think, of a quote. I don't know if it's Corrie ten Boom or somebody of that effect, but the quote says something to the effect that I hold gently to the things of this world, so that when God pries them out of my hand, it doesn't hurt too much. It doesn't hurt too much. So you are fully there, but you also understand that in every season, then you can still just go forward. So, somebody asked this question. They said, when I look at, somebody was talking about social media, and they said, when I look at what men and women post, I notice something. And the person said, the women, she was a lady asking the question, the lady are always talking about affirming themselves, they're encouraging themselves, but the men are talking about things. And, and how come men don't talk about this affirming stuff, like affirming themselves? And you say that, that's something that a father should do. And should a father affirm the girls differently from the boys? So everybody needs to be affirmed and their potential be affirmed.
Yeah, no, everyone needs to be affirmed, everyone. Now, the strange thing is, and you're a psychologist, so you can maybe tell me better, but the strange thing is, I've worked with millions of people, strange thing is that the affirmation of the father is remembered much better than the affirmation of the mother. It is as if the voice of the father, carves affirmation, the positive things, deeper into our lives than the voice of the mother. Maybe the mother are those to console and care when we're in trouble, but the one to put us on his shoulder, to lift us up in life. I think the voice of the father is absolutely essential there. This is what I just observed by going around and see what people remember. And I can tell you many stories of how that happened. So I just think that the father needs to speak that affirming voice to everyone. Because the father, and in many cases, the father, if he corrects as well, that voice is also stronger than that of the mother. And therefore, the fathers must learn to turn correction-based education to affirmation-based education, because it's much stronger. And actually, it looks like the neuroscience is telling us that you got to affirm 6 times for one correction. So if we try to change the minds of the fathers to say 6 times, yes, great, well done, good, and so on, and that then they earn the right to once correct. And if we can swing that around, then the world will be a completely different place, because then we'll be looking out for good behavior, affirm good behavior, and therefore establish good behavior. And then people would like to be good. And I saw this in my own growing of my kids. The first one I corrected all the time. The last one I affirmed all the time. And the last one is by far the most disciplined. And it was my mistake of not understanding on how to be a father.
Beautiful thing that you learned from it. No, I believe it. It's true, because I've observed it myself, because people do ask this question about, my father not affirming me, not encouraging me. In fact, I have a friend, he tells a story. He says that he was a cricketer. He used to play cricket and used to do well. In fact, I think he was the only person who was doing well in his school, and he would play. He'd be the only black guy on the field playing this cricket. And he says he'd perform on average, he'd just be doing okay. Until one day he was just playing an ordinary game, and then he saw his father in the stands. And his father just nodded. His father came late to the game, and his father nodded. And he says, Thabang, after I saw my father nod, and I was just going 6 and 4, 6 and 4. And because he did that, I see it with my own children. Daddy, look, they're always doing this, daddy, look. And I see how important that is. Because the time is just running away so fast, right? The other thing that a father does is then provide a security. And more, I wanted maybe to explore your mind regarding this, more this provision, right? More financial provision, because the father provides different things, right? You provide security in that when you are there, your children are safe. Even when they play, you catch them doing such things. And I've noticed a lot of also sexual abuse usually happens around when the father is not. A lot of things happen when you're not around. And but I was curious about, in a world where the financial part is shifting, men not working, men not feeling good enough with maybe your partner is any more than you, men. And there's this message that it's okay if you don't do that, but you say something else, because you say, and when you have children, it's also your responsibility to take care of those children, which we are hearing different messages now and then, very conflicting messages, maybe if we can touch on that, and maybe just your closing thoughts also after that.
Yeah. That I think the notion that we can procreate children without taking responsibility for them should stop. I mean, immediately and forever. If I co-create a person, then I have to take responsibility for that person. And in South Africa, we see this, that unfortunately, we know there are not too many job opportunities. And we know that the system is part of the problem and all of that. And the history is part of the problem, etc. But the point is this, that sense of responsibility should stay with the father. It doesn't mean that he has to earn most of the money, but I always say when we come in an argument on who needs to do what and so on, we got to think of the needs of the children. Not philosophize on, do we have the same value or whatever because we work or not work, but no, the needs of the children. They have specific needs in specific times. And then you got to be available for that. And that's the first thing to think about. And then to provide, I think that men really should, all people should, but men particularly, should assume that responsibility of I must be the provider as well. In some countries, unfortunately, they think this is the only thing that men do. And then I have to get their minds out of this and say, no, you have to do much more than this. This is the small part of what you have to do. But we cannot throw the responsibility of provision out of the back door. And so there must be a great agreement between mom and dad on how to earn enough money to give the children great opportunities in life, but not to overwork so that you don't have time for them, because that is also senseless. If you provide but not give them the provision of time and care and all the other things that you have to do. So thinking through that and planning that is absolutely essential, but never discard the responsibility of being a provider for the children. That comes with that responsibility of having a child. Otherwise, we should not have children and avoid it at all costs. But it is a responsibility, and it should stay a responsibility for men.
Thank you very much.
Your last question on anything else? Yeah. On anything else? Thabang, very shortly. You know what is our big problem? We want heaven at home. All of us. I've never come across one person saying to me, I don't want heaven at home. But we do not do the things that will bring heaven home. So that's nonsense. You know, if you do things that will create chaos and so on, you will never have heaven at home. So why don't we set our minds so clearly on, I want heaven at home, and I will do all the things at all costs to get heaven at home. And this is why I wrote the book, and so that you can know exactly what to do. And I can promise everyone, if you do those, those are the building blocks of getting heaven at home. If you commit yourself completely, fully to it, the result and the fruit would be heaven at home. And this is what I wish for, not only myself, but for all my neighbors and beyond. Heaven at home in South Africa. Can't you imagine? Can we imagine a world again where they say, oh, South Africans, those are the guys that have heaven at home. If that could be the message to the world from South Africa, everyone will come back to South Africa, stay in South Africa, and make this our greatest place, the greatest place on earth.
Cassie, thank you very much. Beautiful book. I was actually telling another lady, it's a clear principle of a school yesterday, and she went and she got it. Thank you for this beautiful book. The time isn't enough, but I really appreciate your time. The first time I heard you speak, I don't normally get this with everyone, but something in me jumped, you know, and hence I said I actually wanted to take a drive. So may you stay healthy, coffee one day, but much appreciated. This has added to me, and I do believe that it will add to many people's lives. So Godspeed. Thank you very much for all you have sacrificed.
Thank you, my friend, and thank you that you are really a builder of a nation through the things that you do. And if we all do it in a little bit like you are doing it, we will have a great future.
Take care.
Thank you. Bless you.